Hello everyone, we are from Adelaide, and today we're going to present some very simple, very cheap, very effective nudges that are going to help consumers identify what is happening with open banking, and we're going to help them make very, very informed choices when it comes to comparison services. So I think with a question like this, it's very broad. We should start with some context. So we're going to imagine that there's a time in the future where banks are willing to provide these open banking services, or maybe there's some legislation such that they're obliged to on their website. After this point, then, when you go to a comparison service, that's when you say, hey, I want to give you my data, and then you go from there. So one of the first things that we think about is we think about the privacy and all your settings and stuff, and you think it's the ostrich effect. And you never really take in what's going on. You don't really know what's going on with your data right now, which is a big issue. So one of the things that we really want to focus on is making sure that that doesn't happen with open banking. We really want consumers to be making informed choices. So right now I've got the video playing, and as you can see, what we want to do is put all the information about open banking straight after the terms and conditions when you're signing up for a credit card for the first time. So this is really helpful. The first thing is you've already gone through putting in all the information that you have to. You know it can be a bit of a pain, and it's very clear of a bit of a subset of the information that is actually going to be used. So you can see on the left here, under the with open banking, we just want to make it super, super clear what open banking is. So we're not the best graphic designers, as you can see, but if you could imagine some really nice graphics, just very simple, very straight to the point and concise, just so that consumers can really get an idea of what's going on. And on the right-hand side, it's just going to be all the details that not only are shared when you actually do open banking, but all the things that you have to provide yourself if you're not with this service.
An issue that we initially identified with this nudge, however, was the messenger effect. So at the moment, this would be displayed on a banking website, and at the moment, the banks are copping a bit of a hiding in the Royal Commission. And trust between the consumers and the banks are at an all-time low. So we thought a way to avoid this messenger effect and hopefully avoid people disregarding this information because it's coming from the banks and maybe it looks like a sales pitch, is to have, as you saw before, a sign saying this is a message from the Australian government, some logos from the ACCC and the Treasury, and the reason we want these is because we see these as more trusted institutions than the banks. And basically have a link to a video that you can watch, it's optional, and that is plastered with the Australian logo, and then there's a link to a nicely designed brochure with further information that again has more Australian government logos plastered throughout. And as you saw before as well, the continue button is on the bottom of the page, so you will have to scroll through all of this and go through all of this in order to continue in the application process.
All right, so we're going to address the switching problem now. So if you've ever been to a restaurant, and a little trick that they use on their menus is to place a extremely expensive item right next to a very profitable item, so as to make it seem more affordable. And what they're using is the well-known anchoring effect, where the consumer's decision problem is influenced by some arbitrary anchor. And so we think that we could use this to the consumer's benefit by, for example, if you're on a comparison services website and you're presented with a set of alternatives, the order in which they're presented can actually affect the final decision. And so we propose presenting the information in a form that's relative to the current credit card that you're using. So for example, instead of saying, for example, credit card A has a 10% higher credit limit as opposed to credit card A has a $5,000 credit limit, because it makes the information more relevant to the consumer and makes the anchor such that it would actually help the consumer. In addition, given that the comparison services would have access to a consumer's data, it could be argued that through some revealed preference mechanism, they could construct a rough preference ranking on the features that are most relevant to a consumer and present the most relevant comparison first, so that it sticks in the consumer's head when they actually make the decision. And finally, I think a little small nudge to avoid the information overload would be to present information visually with the aid of little colored bars instead of lots of numbers, so that the information sticks out more.
Lovely. So that leaves us to the final nudge we have for the switching services. So as a team, when we were researching switching services, we looked at a switching service and we tried to apply for a credit card. And as soon as we got recommended one, we looked at one called Bank West. And from South Australia, we had no idea who these people were, so we immediately discounted them for, say, ANZ, Bank SA. And this is the availability heuristic. And so we have a tendency to overweight things that we seem familiar or we see as trustworthy. And so we think that we can address this by simply removing the brand names from the options. So we can see option 1 and option 2 there, and not Westpac or Bank SA. And this is encouraging people to not resort to their system one thinking immediately, but instead go, okay, maybe I should think about the benefits that will actually affect my deal. And so this small nudge ties in with the other nudges for the switching service, in that it encourages the information we want to display to the consumer the best way through taking advantage of anchoring, but then also removing the behavioural insights that lead people to think, okay, I'm going to go full back on the default option. This again ties in with the data sharing services, in which these switching services utilise open banking, which we've nudged through a small thing when we sign up for credit cards, to create a system of very cheap, easy to implementable nudges, which capture the essence of what a nudge really should be. And we think that's going to help consumers make the best decision for both their data and their credit cards. Thank you.
You mentioned that you go through this process or you see all this information when you take out your first credit card. So what do we do with all the Australians that already have a credit card?
That's kind of beyond what we were trying to tackle. We are just essentially trying to target new applicants for credit cards. So if they don't already have open banking and they go to switch already, they will be hit with this. Or they're young people like us going out to the workforce. They'll apply for their first credit card. These are the people that this will target. Our nudges don't cover everyone, but we weren't trying to fix every problem.
Yeah, I think like credit cards is an example. Obviously, it's very easy to roll this out on a number of products. So if you really want to get lots of products involved, you can easily just like insert it into the same thing. It's very simple, so it can just be slotted in kind of wherever you want. Yeah.
Sorry, this is probably a dumb question, but I mean, if you're targeting people who are starting off and don't have a credit card yet, then what's your anchor? You're saying switching from what? Nothing?
Yes, that's very cool. So should say, I guess that's part of the process. It's you apply for a credit card initially, you get a deal, and then 2 years down the track, you might think maybe I should try for a different credit card. And so this is a system where you anchor on the current credit card. This could be other things like with open banking, I suppose we could anchor on current transaction history from their bank or something. So there's other options, I suppose, there. But we just wanted to leverage the information that we currently have through open banking as the anchor, so then there's a proper comparison relatively.
And just one other follow-up on feasibility, sort of practical financial feasibility. So who's paying for the, for the running of the website and for, in general, the searching of the information and everything like this?
So we imagine the switching services as part of what's already existing. So we saw the app developers before these were designed to just slightly change what they're developing in their current system. And in terms of the open banking, that's to come with the banking website through a system that we imagine that there's going to be some legislation where they have to share. So these are very small, cost-effective ways because they already fall into the current system, we believe.